I am Dr. Meredith Burr. This is the Jumpstart Your Success in Your College Math Courses workshop. I am a senior lecturer in the School of Mathematical and Statistical Sciences. I've been at Clemson since 2012. Before that, I did my undergraduate work at Providence College in Providence, Rhode Island, and I went to graduate school at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts. Graduated with my PhD in 2010, worked at Rhode Island College for 2 years, also in Providence, Rhode Island, and then I've been here at Clemson since 2012. So this is my 9th year at Clemson. I've taught a variety of classes at Clemson. I've taught Calc 1 and Calc 2 primarily. I've also taught some intro stats and some of our essential math for informed society, which is Math 1010, but a lot of Calc 2 recently, especially because I am the Calc 2 coordinator. Let's see, what else would I like to share with you? My husband, Dr. Michael Burr, is also a faculty member in the math department. And we have 2 children, 2 sons that are 1 year old and 3 years old. So they do keep us very busy. I enjoy teaching math tips and resources, and also be happy to take any questions that you have. So to give you an opportunity to get to know some of some other students, I'm going to go ahead and open some breakout rooms. So I'll put about 3 to 4 people in a breakout room. So I just encourage you, once you're in the breakout room, to introduce yourself to the other people there, maybe share where you're from, what math classes you're going to be taking, what your major is, and maybe just something about yourself. So we're going to go ahead and create those rooms so you'll get an opportunity to join a breakout room. So Riley, you should have an invite to join a breakout room. You can go ahead and click join to join that breakout room. All right, everyone, welcome back to the main room. I hope you got to know a few people, feel more connected to Clemson as we're all in our individual homes or apartments joining this meeting. So I'm going to go through a couple of tips. If you have questions during what I'm going to be saying, please feel free to post questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question. And then we'll also leave time at the end for more questions. Whoops. So I just want to start talking about the idea of being a math person or not being a math person. Some people may have this idea that I am a math person or that I'm not a math person. And it's actually a myth that there are math people and not math people. So if you're one of the people who thinks you're not, you really probably are. This is not a real thing to be a math person or not a math person. Research shows that talent is really much less important than hard work, preparation, and self-confidence. And studies have found that convincing students that they could make themselves smarter by hard work would lead them to work harder and get higher grades. So it's really more about the work that you're going to put into your classes than any kind of innate ability. So you're willing to work hard and ask questions and things, you really can do well in your math classes. So connected to this is this idea of mindset. So there's something called a growth mindset and something called a fixed mindset. So research has shown that students' mindsets, how they perceive their abilities, play a key role in their motivation and achievement. And it's been found that if we change someone's mindset, a student's mindset, their achievement can be increased. So Students who believed their intelligence could be developed, which is called a growth mindset, outperformed students who believed that their intelligence was fixed, which is called the fixed mindset. So most people are not always having a growth mindset or always having a fixed mindset, but you want to try to move yourself towards a growth mindset because you really can, you can learn new things. We're able to form new connections in our brains through hard work, through learning information. Our intelligence is not fixed. We can increase our skills and our ability to do new things through practice. So you want to keep that in mind in your classes as well. So a little bit sort of about specifically the class that you might be in, you want to make sure that when you are signing yourself for a class, that you have set yourself up for success with the class that you've chosen, that you've chosen the right class for your background skills. So make sure you know what the prerequisite for your math class is. Certainly on paper, you will have met the prerequisite for a class that you were allowed to enroll in. But sometimes the class that you had before that might have missed a couple of pieces of information that your instructor is going to assume that you know. Maybe it's been several years since you've taken the prerequisite course. So you want to make sure you're familiar with what the prereq for that class is and what the instruction that you know. So if you're not sure what assumptions are going to be made about your background knowledge, make sure that you ask. Math is a class that often builds on previous skills. So make sure you understand what is not going to be taught in that class and what's going to be assumed that you already know sort of as a base skill, and then be able to build on that in the course. So some classes, especially our calculus sequence classes, have a basic skills quiz and may have suggested review problems as well to help you review and prepare for being successful in that class. So when there are prerequisite skills to a class, you don't want to say, oh, yeah, that's kind of familiar. I sort of remember that. You want to make sure you practice those skills so that you're fluent in those skills, because that's going to be your base, your foundation. So you want to have a really solid foundation so you can build on it. If you have a shaky foundation, then that new knowledge that you're going to be learning in isn't going to have something to kind of stick to, and it's just going to make things more challenging going forward. So you want to make sure you are fluent in those prerequisite skills. So let me show you where you can find some of this information about things like review problems. So let me go to, let me see, over here. Let's see, did I close that? So let me show you how you could easily find a course website. Let me just say Clemson coordinated classes. So we've got, for our coordinated classes, a good amount of information on our department website here. And notice I was able to just find that by Googling Clemson coordinated classes. If you were in a particular class, you could certainly Google Clemson 1060, and you're going to come up with that course web page. So I'm going to use 1060 as an example here. Before I go through this, let me just do a quick poll here, and go ahead and let me know. I've put a variety of things on this poll. What class you're going to be taking this fall? Just get a sense of what classes people are in. Get everybody a little bit to respond. So I see that we got a lot of people in business calculus, so I can certainly point out a couple of things in there. A few people in Calc 1 or our 2-semester long calculus, Calc 3 or differential equations. All right, okay, looks like we got almost everybody responding there. So not too many people in Calc 1. I'm going to use this just as a quick example here, and then we'll look at the business calculus information for a minute before I go back to my sort of more general tips. So for all of these classes here, for many of these classes here. There is a coordinated course website that will have a lot of information. For 1060 here, you'll see there's a syllabus and a calendar. 1060 also happens to have links to their lecture site. For most of our coordinated classes for this fall, due to this online format that we have is going to be a flipped format. So there will be videos to be watching, pre-recorded videos on course content to watch before class, so that your Zoom class meetings can be used more for practicing problems with other students, where you can ask questions and get help from your instructor or your TA. 1060s are posted on this website for many of the courses, most of the courses. Your course materials, any videos that you need to be any videos that you need to be watching will be in your Canvas course. When I talked about prerequisite skills, for example, on 1060's website, there's a pre-calculus review sheet and an answer key, and there is a short quiz towards the beginning of the semester for that course that gives you some information on your background skills and lets you know what you need to review, and can sort of help you decide if you've placed in the appropriate course for you. For business calculus, also you have lots of information on the course website, course syllabus, all kinds of information about your course materials, information about the software that's needed for online exams, and then you also have old exams. So this is true for many of our other courses as well. So of course, that's a really good resource for preparing for exams, is looking at an old exam and working problems from that old exam. Okay, so let me go back to our slides here. Remember, if you're trying to decide if you're in the right course, there is an add drop period. This of course applies to all of your classes, where you can change up your schedule during that first week without any penalty. So let's look at some more tips that I have here. So let me just move this piece over. Okay. Okay, so just some general tips. Of course, our classes are going to meet less frequently than your high school classes did. But attendance is key, and there's going to be two sort of forms of going to class, right? So you want to make sure that you are watching any videos, reading any notes, any course materials that your instructor is sharing with you on the Canvas course page. You may need to watch some pre-recorded videos on worked examples, on the concepts before you go to class. Make sure you take your own notes on those. Research shows that physically writing out information helps with retention, because you're sort of summarizing things as you're writing it out, and so that's helping that learning sort of stick in your mind. So make sure you are actively taking your own notes. Get to know your classmates through Zoom. You can set up your own ways to connect with your classmates outside of class, whether you want to just exchange cell phone numbers and emails, or whether you want to set up anything fancy like a Zoom meeting with students from your class. Students do have, Clemson students, with your Clemson username and password, you are able to start your own Zoom meeting. So you could have a Zoom meeting and meet with other students to study. You want to make sure you're doing your homework early, so you have time to ask questions. You're going to go to your professor's office hours, which will be via Zoom. Make an appointment to meet with your professor, and then also take advantage of different kinds of resources that are offered through the Academic Success Center. We have, for many courses, business calculus as well as the calculus classes. There are what's called PAL leaders, peer-assisted learning leaders, that are undergraduate students who've done well in the class before, and they come to class and hold supplemental sessions to class where you can get more practice and ask questions. And then we have tutors available for many math classes as well, where you can get sort of more either group or one-on-one help with specific problems. So the key is to ask questions whenever you have questions. So I'm just going to share this short video here about encouraging you to meet with your professor.
Do you who suffer from stress, sleep deprivation, and academic status report denial, living in a world of why, who, how, what the? If any of these symptoms sound familiar, you may be one of the millions of college students suffering from fear of meeting one-on-one with my professor, or when.
Is it dangerous?
Yes. Patients who have untreated cases can experience increasingly debilitating outcomes and persistent pangs of regret.
How did I even get FOMP?
Science may never know. The important thing to remember is that FOMP is 100% treatable. Introducing FO. Faculty Office Hours, or O.
Apologize if I click on anything else.
For short.
Oh?
That's right. FO is a groundbreaking treatment plan for students suffering from fear of meeting one-on-one with my professor.
Do I need a prescription to get FO?
Oh no. FO is an effective treatment that begins with a simple visit to your doctor of philosophy's office.
Oh. Does it hurt?
No. Contrary to popular belief, FO patients report painless experiences that are often described as much better than expected.
Is it habit forming?
It is absolutely addictive. The vast majority of successful FO users continue for up to 4 years.
Sounds amazing. How do I sign up for FO?
Simply call or email your doctor of philosophy today to set up a free trial appointment to find out if FO is right for you.
Once I tried FO, everything fell into place. I understood what was going on in class, and I knew how to study for my next test. I'm hooked.
Possible side effects of FO include seeing your professor as a human for the first time, understanding course content, increased GPA, a general sense of well-being, healthier sleeping habits, improved confidence.
These statements have not been approved by the Federal Drug Administration. They have been approved by Dr. Michael Crow, which means they are science. Do not take FO if you have a fever or experiencing other symptoms of an actual disease.
FO, because there's literally no good reason not to go.
Of course, the meetings that you might have with your professor now are not going to be in their physical office. They'll be in their home office, like I'm talking to you from now, or from their dining room or their living room. But your professor still very much wants to meet with you and help you and answer your questions. So please do take advantage of any office hours or appointments for office hours that they make available. Okay, so a little bit more about tips for being successful in math classes and about what math classes are like in general. Math classes are typically cumulative. A lot of times the content is really going to build on it, especially in the calculus classes. So the bad news with that is that if you fall behind early, then it's hard to catch up because the later material is really going to build on that earlier material. But the good news about the cumulative nature of a math class is that as you're learning new material, you're often reviewing previous material because the skills are building on themselves. What you might be learning close to the exam is probably using some of the skills that you learned earlier, so you're not doing something completely different right before the exam than you did a few weeks ago, but you were building on different skills. So that minimizes the amount of memorization that you have to do and allows you to really be practicing those earlier skills all along. So a few tips about math study skills in general. Just like for most of your classes, you want to have a dedicated sort of study space in wherever you're living, apartment, at home, in a dorm. Schedule some specific time to do your prep for class, to do your homework for class. I think the time management piece is even more important in online classes because maybe things feel a little less structured in terms of your day. So you want to make sure you block out periods of your schedule where you're going to be doing any online videos that you have to watch, where you're going to be doing any homework for your class as well. The general rule is about 2 hours of study for each hour in class. And it's good to study for concentrated periods of time with some breaks. So don't just do marathon study sessions, but study for a chunk of time and then give yourself a break to allow the information that you've been reading and practicing to sink in. Okay. Some more general tips here. It's a good idea to preview the material. This says preview material before coming to class. If there's a video, then maybe you open the textbook and you just kind of flip through the pages, just scan it, get a gist of what's going to be explained in the video, and then watch the video and take your notes. Make notes of any questions that you have as you're watching the video. I know that one thing that can be difficult is if you're watching a pre-recorded video, you don't have the chance to ask live questions like you would in a lecture, but write down your questions as you're watching the video and then ask your instructor those questions, depending on how they've set up the way for you to ask questions, whether they have a discussion forum or whether they would just encourage you to email them or bring those questions to class. If you have a record of those questions, then you'll be able to ask those as soon as you have the opportunity. Make sure you get help early with anything that's confusing, and ask questions of not only your instructor, but that could be from your TA or from your classmates. So really do support each other and ask questions of your classmates and help your classmates if they're stuck and you know how to get unstuck on the problem. Take good notes on the examples, on the methods, on the strategy. And work problems until you understand them, not just until you get the answer. So it's useful to write down some notes to yourself in terms of why you started a problem in a particular way. So when you go back and look at it, you see not just that the answer was 5, but you have some idea of how you got that answer and why you did the particular steps that you did on the problem. If there were multiple methods, why did you choose the method that you did? So a little bit more on office hours. I'll repeat multiple times throughout this. Ask questions, go to office hours, ask questions, ask questions. So the worst thing is to just kind of get discouraged and be too embarrassed to ask questions. You really want to ask questions as soon as you have them. Your instructor, your TAs, the tutors, there's lots of people who really want to help you be successful. So ask questions early. Prepare a list of questions that helps focus any kind of meeting you're going to have with an instructor or tutor. And bring your work on any problems that you've done so far and that you want to ask about. With the Zoom meetings, there's all kinds of sharing tools. I'm doing a screen sharing here. If I was meeting with a student to go over an example, I'd be sharing a whiteboard somehow where I could write out some work. You can share your work with instructors. If you just have a phone, you can take a picture of some work that you've done on paper and share that so that your instructor or TA or tutor could see what you did and give you some feedback and help you get unstuck or explain what was going on. So ask questions, ask questions. General, more math study tips here. Practice is essential. It's really the best way to learn math. I mentioned keeping notes on how you did the problem because it's easier to review than to relearn how to do something. This forgetting curve here is showing you with that steep drop off that on day 1, sort of 100% of what you, of the knowledge that was explained in some sort of video or explanation that you got of a problem. And maybe you feel pretty good about learning it right at that time. If you wait too long to go back and look at that information, you're going to lose that knowledge and it's going to take you a lot longer to get back up to that same level of understanding that you had at the beginning. Whereas if you review for short periods regularly, it won't take you that long to get back up to that same sort of level of knowledge that you had initially. So this is encouraging frequent short periods of reviewing and practicing versus is waiting a long time and then having to do kind of a marathon of knowledge that you had. Another study tip, good way to study is to quiz yourself. You strengthen learning by forcing yourself to recall information versus reviewing it. So the bullet point here at the end is saying that underlining, highlighting, rereading are not a good use of your study time because they don't involve practice in accessing or applying what you know and what you need to learn. So your study time for math should primarily be working through problems, quizzing yourself on any key facts or formulas that you need to know, not just on reading over worked solution problems. So that's not a good use of study time. So you want to always make sure that your study time is very active in terms of doing problems. it helps when you are going to see your professor to try to form specific questions. If you're really confused, you may only have kind of a general sense of I'm confused, I don't understand what's going on. But it really helps your professor if you can be a little bit more specific about where you're getting confused. If you're confused about some function notation, you could ask something like, I don't understand why f of x plus h doesn't equal f of x plus h. How can you tell the difference between the equation of a circle and the equation of a line? If you have a particular problem that you've been working on, it can help the instructor, instead of to just say, how do you do problem 17, to ask for help in starting the problem, or maybe you've started the problem and then you got stuck, or you got a different answer than what you know the answer should be. So it helps to have some specific questions to have the person who's helping you, whether that's a tutor, an instructor, a TA, really address the place where you're confused. And your instructor may be able to ask you some questions too to kind of pinpoint where you were getting lost or confused, or where things became unclear. Math anxiety is something that some students struggle with. One reason that math anxiety happens and can make it so that something you knew before, you feel like you have this sort of feeling of blanking out during a test, is because anxiety steals away your working memory resources. So if you've relied on memorization, as soon as you're anxious, that memory is going to be really hard to retrieve. So there's a little bit here about ways to sort of journal and address your anxiety and separate out that sort of anxious feelings from the math skills. But I also believe that because the anxiety is stealing away that working memory, really practicing problems, working to understand how to do the problems rather than memorize, will combat that fact that if you're anxious, you're not going to have that memorization facts really accessible. If you know how to derive something, you can work through the problem step by step and rederive how to do something if you understand how different ideas are connected together. So you want to form as many connections as you can with material. That'll make information much easier to access if you have multiple connections to it, because you won't just be trying to grab the information through one memorization connection, but if it's connected to other information that you have stored in your mind, it'll be much easier to retrieve. This is just talking about how sort of your attitude can affect your performance. If you get stuck in a bad cycle, you need to try to break that cycle of what you can do differently to improve the next time. So if you do well on something, that can kind of feed on itself and improve your confidence and an ability to, I guess, sort of your attitude towards doing better in the future. We've talked a lot about practice. You have lots of those old exams accessible. Best way to study for an exam is going to be to do practice problems. And if your course has an old exam that is available to you, then you absolutely want to make sure that you work on the problems on that old exam. You know, I have something on here about know where the exam is. Well, we're not going to have exams in classrooms this semester, but you will want to know whatever your exam procedures are going to be. How do you access the exam? How do you submit the exam? In many online classes, there will likely be some sort of mock or practice exam to practice using whatever online proctoring software is being used. So you want to make sure you do that practice exam, and then that you also practice the skills that your exam is going to test you on. There's something called Calculus Fight Club that's been offered for business calculus and calculus before, which is a student-run exam review session the Monday before a Wednesday common exam. I don't have the details on how that will run this semester. I'm guessing they'll do something through Zoom, but any details of that will be made available during the semester before the exam, if that resource is going to be available. So I've got some links at the end of these slides on some additional resources. We've got all that coordinated course info on the math website. The Academic Success Center has lots of resources, including information about the peer-assisted learning and tutoring sessions, both of which will be online. There will be information about Zoom links for those sessions. And again, I mentioned the Calculus Flight Club will probably be online, but I don't have the details for that at the moment. The university also offers some online specific learning resources, including some technical resources if you're needing help with computer issues or internet issues. And then there's some more general tips for online classes. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know some people in one of my other sessions wanted a copy of these slides so that they could have those links in front of them. So if you are interested in a copy, please do send me an email at burr3@clemson.edu. But I'll open it up to any general questions that anyone wants to ask now. So you can post a question in the chat. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or things that they'd like to know about for their math classes for the fall?